investigation uncovers Dolton Mayor, the super mayor, Tiffany Henyard's pattern of mismanagement and deception, Lightfoot says. Yeah, mayor to mayor. Did you guys watch this? I watched it and I was like, what? There's nothing there. Then I watched it a second time. There's some stuff there, but there's not enough to pin on Tiff to probably send her to jail or prison. I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. And I know I've been saying this for a while, and I said it yesterday before all this stuff came out. There's some mismanagement. There's no major amount of money missing. It's one thing to overspend. It's another thing to have some ethical issues. It's another thing to have some crazy stuff go on a trip in Vegas. But hey, let's get into what Lori Lightfoot said. Here we go. We got to go to one of the studies here. We got to go to WGN. See how they summarize this.
I'm Mike Macher.
And I'm Rink.
We're starting with breaking news. A South suburb is facing new scrutiny tonight as former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot releases the results of her investigation. She says incompetence in Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard's administration has driven the village into debt as spending soared.
Many of her findings have been previous.
Incompetence, not criminal negligence. Big difference. Big difference.
Detailed in WGN Investigates reporting. And WGN's Dana Rebick is live tonight in Dalton with the latest. Dana?
Well, Lightfoot laid out her report tonight here behind me inside the Dalton Park District Field House. It was packed with residents who are extremely concerned about the village's finances.
Their eyes is open. They waking up now. They don't woke up the sleeping bear. That's what I would call it.
A packed room full of Dalton residents here to listen to the final report from former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, detailing the findings of her investigation into the village of Dalton and its mayor, Tiffany Henyard.
The residents of Dalton have suffered needlessly because of the financial mismanagement under this current mayor.
The Dalton Village Board of Trustees hired Lightfoot last spring after a series of WGN Investigates reports detailing Mayor Tiffany Henyard's first-class travel, questionable charity, and self-promotion. Lightfoot laying out a pattern of unchecked spending.
There is not a system for ensuring that there are receipts for the various credit card purchases. And what this means, unfortunately, is that the Board of Trustees in many instances was not able to even track or see credit card purchases that were being done over the last few years.
But that doesn't mean that what those things were purchased, what was purchased was illegal. It doesn't mean that those purchases weren't legit. It just means the accounting system, they don't have one. They just buy stuff willy-nilly, no real receipts needed because they're not following the protocol of their spending system. They're not following anything's bottom line.
For example, $48,000 spent on building an ice rink, charged to village credit cards with no board approval and no
charged to village credit cards and purchased with Amazon. Remember that huge big, $43,000, 44 grand worth of stuff on Amazon. What happened there? Well, it was a bunch of ice rink stuff. They did purchases on Amazon. It's legit to do that. It's legit to do that. So were those purchases illegal? I'm going to say no. We don't know because the books they're not complete. We don't have a full set of books and they haven't been audited. So we don't know. But I'm looking at the ice rink right here. There's an ice rink. I'm going to hedge a bet and say the stuff they bought from Amazon that's for the ice rink, most of it was the underlayment. It was the actual, I don't want to say flooring, but it's the surface material for the rink. That's what they bought. That's not illegal. How they accounted for it, questionable. Let's keep going.
Competitive bidding process. Spending peaked in 2023 when more than $775,000 was spent on credit cards.
Okay, so people are freaked out that there's $775,000 in credit cards spent. What's normal? Well, that was a little bit more than normal. But we know that that's a case. In 23, that was the highest they spent. And in 24, that's been reined back in. The Lori Lightfoot basically said, hey, we've made recommendations to the board. They've already taken these into consideration. Dalton is already getting back on its feet. They're in that process right now.
than 200,000 of that on Amazon, and more than 117,000 on travel, including those 2 so-called business trips to Las Vegas. Lightfoot also
They did some nice trips to Vegas. They went there for an event, not illegal. Maybe a little unethical, maybe a little sketchy, staying at the Four Seasons Hotel. But you know what? It's not all that expensive. This Four Seasons Hotel, I looked it up. It's not crazy expensive. So if you're gonna, go to a Four Seasons, that's the one you go to, right? So this whole notion of, yes, they overspent. Yes, they spent on some stuff that are, a lot of meals, some donuts. But hey, you got some cops in there too. I'm not trying to make excuses, but it wasn't the criminal enterprise that we all, we're thinking, Tiff's she's gonna get arrested and she's gonna go to prison. None of that came out in Lori Lightfoot's report. It was interesting. At the end of Lori Lightfoot's report, she had question and answer, and somebody asked her, how many crimes were committed? And Lori Lightfoot said, we're not even going to quantify that. She said something to that extent. We're not even going to go there. So who knows? Maybe none, maybe a bunch. But Lori Lightfoot didn't outline any criminal activity, some real negligence, some real just shoddy, basically leadership and management, not following protocol, that kind of thing, but nothing criminal.
Also highlighted a broken FOIA system with no one on staff to properly manage public information requests and no staff accountant in the village to oversee spending.
It's just the spending of the money and how it was spent and how they did it so much like undercover and nobody really got a chance to see what was going on.
This all
Correct.
comes after last week when Henyard.
But again, that doesn't mean the money was spent on the wrong things. It just means that the village wasn't able to have the system of oversight that they probably should. Tiffany Henyard and co. took control and basically boxed everybody out from getting a view at what was being spent. But that, again, doesn't mean the activity was illegal. To me, so much of this was a power play. She wanted control. She wanted control of the school board. She wanted control of this, wanted control of spending, wanted control of That's not necessarily illegal. Just saying.
Was found in contempt of court after failing to sign liquor licenses for businesses in Dalton that the board had previously approved, and a looming federal investigation into the mayor.
The FBI has also been in contact with various people who have information about the allegations are here, what they intend to do and the timing of that. No one really knows except for them.
My thought on the FBI is if the FBI was going to step in and arrest her, they would have done so by now. I might be totally wrong on that, but that's kind of my thought is I don't think we're going to see that. I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, that's where we sit. I'm going to do a bunch of videos on this. We're going to cover some of this stuff because I think there are some answers in a lot of Lori Lightfoot's information. Like, for instance, that last example of the person that's running, what was it, St. Patrick's? That's a new restaurant and bar in Chicago. In Dalton. So it's that new restaurant with the bar with the 3 liquor licenses, and Tiffany Henyard wouldn't sign them, and she got an indirect contempt of court. Indirect. The judge said, sign those licenses, and Tiffany said, yep, okay, and then just didn't. And the judge said, get your ass back in here on Friday. So they're trying to work out that. The judge gave Tiffany Henyard 7 days to come up with an excuse or a reason as to why those liquor licenses weren't signed in time. But I'm using that example as something that Tiffany Henyard and co. have done, which is holding up a liquor license. They've also either taken away or they've been involved in licenses, business licenses. And I think there's been 11 lawsuits, maybe it's 7 lawsuits, something like that. A number of lawsuits against Tiffany Henyard and the village of Dalton. There are 48 total lawsuits. That's how many lawsuits have been launched against Dalton during Tiffany Henyard's time. 48. She is uninsurable. A bunch of those, 11 of those were FOIA, meaning they requested a Freedom of Information Act, and Dalton did nothing because they don't have anybody working the FOIA. It's a complex deal. So they don't have anybody working the FOIA, but that doesn't mean you could just not give out the Freedom of Information Act. That is illegal. And there's an automatic, hey, you can sue if that's the case. I know WGN has sued and gotten information. But that's about the only way during Tiffany Henyard's time period to basically get any information. We're going to go through a bunch of these and just see what the news outlets are covering. Despite a lack of subpoena power and cooperation from village workers, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot said her investigation uncovered a pattern of mismanagement and deception by Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, but not criminal activity. I want to emphasize that. And that is what I have been saying. Now, where this could go sideways, this is only Dalton. You've got the investigation that the FBI is doing. That could include Township of Thornton. Now, Mayor Lightfoot has said the pattern of activities that Tiffany Henyard and co. And when I say co, I mean Keith Price and other folks that are supportive of her leadership. When Lightfoot basically did a summation of her report, she said that the activities, the mismanagement, the overspending in Village of Dalton, it looks like they've done the same in Township of Thornton. This report wasn't meant to cover everything Tiffany Henyard has done as supervisor in Township of Thornton. This is just Dalton. There was a concerted, systematic effort on behalf of Mayor Henyard and others in her administration to hide the true financial condition of the Village of Dalton from the trustees and from members of the public, said Lightfoot, now a senior consultant with Charles River Associates. They're an investigation firm. This was not a forensic audit. They do not have a set of books that are audited. All of this information was going off unaudited reports. Lori Lightfoot didn't have a lot to work with in many instances. One of the things I thought was super interesting was that the Vegas trip where we've got the rape accusations, not one individual in any of the folks involved with that worked with Lightfoot on providing more information. They all basically just said, nope, we're not giving you any information. So why wouldn't they give Lightfoot any information? You know what I mean? And the police in Las Vegas basically said, nope, we're not pressing charges. So what does that leave you with? A whole lot of nothing burger, right? Lightfoot, a former prosecutor, delivered her findings to Dalton residents who are weary but angry on Monday evening. I think Lightfoot, given what she had to work with, I think she did a good report. I think her presentation was really good. I know it was boring, and I know everybody was looking for the smoking gun. There effectively wasn't one. But there's still a lot to unpack here. It's saddening that all this has been going on and no one stepped in to stop it. Well, let's talk about that for a second. You don't know this stuff until you get into it. Until you have somebody present you a report, you don't know what's really going on. And effectively, we still don't know what's really going on because we've got these accusations by Lightfoot. Hey, she did this and it impacted this, and we think this is what happened. But we don't really know because Lightfoot doesn't have the ability to subpoena any of this information to really get to the bare bones of what's going on. But what she did reveal is that there's some bad decisions, some terrible management, some lack of accounting. Just basically, you're putting a bunch of people in charge of a big business that spends and brings in a couple million a month that don't have any clue how to run a business. Period. And without the folks in charge that know how to do that, I think you've got the blind leading the blind. And I think that's what has happened with Tiffany Henyard. I think they went to some nice meals. I think they stayed in some nice hotels. but I don't think there's money missing as far as, we took $1 million out and we're going to go to Aruba, that kind of thing. I don't think that's the case at all. I'm not seeing that at all. So that's what I've been kind of saying. And that's what I've been trying to make clear is that, yes, there is some terrible judgment. Yes, there's some mismanagement, but is it criminal? Is it criminal in nature? I'm going to say, I don't think so. I don't think so. Lightfoot has found travel expenses. Okay, but they're travel expenses. That's legit, including for 9 domestic trips taken by Henyard and other village officials. None of those, the 2 trips to Vegas, they didn't result in any business, but it's still legit to take a trip with your entourage to go do economic development. Hey, we're going to go check out how they do shopping malls. That's literally what they were doing. Yep, they spent some money. There probably should have been a little bit of oversight on that. Is that illegal? I mean, we're going to wait for the FBI to see what they say. But the fact that Lightfoot's already come out with her report, it's pretty clear that Tiffany Henyard is not going to get reelected in either the village of Dalton or the township of Thornton. I think the FBI has better things to do, and I think they're just sitting on their findings, and I think they're going to come out and say, nah, nothing to see here. So Lightfoot's found travel expenses, including for 9 domestic trips taken by Henyard and other village officials. One of those trips to Las Vegas is the subject of a lawsuit alleging sexual assault and claims of retaliation. All right, let's talk about that. So let's go with the young lady who claims that Tiffany Henyard fired her for bringing up the fact that she was sexually assaulted. We don't know what happened there. It's a he said, she said thing, right? And the cop said, we're not prosecuting. So that kind of makes you go, okay. So if the cops are saying maybe it was consensual sex, I don't know. I wasn't there. I believe that the young lady who had this happen to her, I believe that when she speaks, she is speaking from some sort of trauma. She's talking about some kind of trauma that happened to her, whether it was this incident or something else. I don't know. We weren't there. You weren't there. Only, Andrew Holmes and the young lady who shall go unmentioned, because I just don't even want to bring up her name. We'll just, you know who it is. And I'm just going to let that, keep going out there. Lightfoot has also found soaring expenditures in 2023 on at least half a dozen village credit cards, including more than 43,000 in Amazon purchases in a single day. But that's not illegal. It's not illegal. I hate to hammer on that, but the media is couching this as there was $775,000 expenses. Okay. What's a normal day? Well, 773,000. I mean, what's a normal year period? 773. Oh, okay. Now, 775 was more than normal, and it was more than expenditures were more than revenue being taken in. But the village has basically gotten that back in control. And one of the bar graphs that Mayor Lightfoot presented showed that revenue and expenses in 2024 were much closer in line. And that's been because she made a recommendation back in that first initial findings to the board and said, hey, you need to get this in line with this. And the board has done that. So I think a lot of the things have been rectified, have already been changes have been made midstream by the board. And I think they've done a really good job there. So I think the village of Dalton's exposure is much less than what we thought it probably was back in, when was that? April? I think April. On Monday, Lightfoot said those Amazon purchases, which she first told the public about last summer, were for ice rink supplies that were delivered to the village. Totally legit. Well, that's, so the question there is, Lightfoot just not Lightfoot, but Mayor Henyard, she went ahead and had the ice rink built, right? I mean, didn't ask anybody, just kind of did it. And it hasn't been open. It hasn't been able to be used by the public. So there's some question there. Hey, you used taxpayers' funds and you didn't ask anybody. So there's some accounting oversight that hasn't been in place, but we've known about that. but she's still going to be able to get off from saying, hey, I spent that money on something that is, physically, method of attachment is a term in real estate. It just means how is it attached to the land, making it real estate? Well, an ice rink, I mean, that ain't going anywhere, is it? No. So that's the Villages effectively, right? So I think the argument can be made that was purchased for the community and it's in the community and it's now a community fixture. Maybe the next mayor can take it over and figure out something to do and get some use out of it. You got a skating rink? Let the kids learn how to skate. Make sure you get that insurance back, that liability, and we're going to talk about that too. There's no inventory control system within the Village, so we have no idea what happened once the things arrived. Okay. All right. So this was on the Amazon purchases. So you can say that we have no idea what happened once the things arrived. And then there was a big, ooh, and people were talking. They bought $43,000 worth of skate rink material for the surface. It's installed. You can look at it. You can see it. So saying that once things arrive, we don't really know, it is true, 100% true. But that doesn't mean that the things that were purchased didn't go towards the community. Okay? Residents and multiple trustees at Monday's meeting said an ice rink on Greenwood Road was completed in 2023, but that the public has no regular access to it. Okay. Is that illegal? I mean, if Henyard's using it, which it sounds like she has a few times, but she's not using it on the regular, she's not pocketing that money, is that illegal? Man, I wouldn't want to be a prosecuting attorney and try to go into the wall on that one. I'm not an attorney by any means, but I'd say that, what are you going to hit her up on? Hey, you built it and you didn't ask us and you haven't let us use it, but now we got it back. So, you know what I mean? We don't have any staff to operate it. We couldn't afford staff even if we wanted to operate it and it's inoperable. All right. Okay. Said Dalton trustee Brittany Norwood. And we were wondering how the ice skating rink was getting paid for, but she would say, oh, we're using grants. Okay. All right. Again, what I would say is that she did a little shifty and told you one thing and did another, but that's what the super mayor is famous for. She's famous for talking a bunch of nonsense in circles. And you don't really know at the end of the day what she's talking about. She tried that with the last judge with the St. Patrick's restaurant, bar and grill, whatever it is. It looks like a cool building. She tried that with the judge and the judge basically said, no, you're talking some mumbo jumbo here, and basically decided her in indirect contempt of court. Lightfoot alleged a pattern of circumventing city policies, including a failure to gain trustee approval for purchases over $5,000. Lightfoot makes it super obvious in the beginning. They have a policy at the Village of Dalton. It just hasn't been followed at all. Now, followed by anybody. Is that criminal behavior? No. Is it a good idea? No. Is it negligent? Yes. Does it abuse the finances of the village? Yes. Is it criminal? That's what I would say there, right? Failure to comply with freedom of information and requests and a lack of a staff accountant. Lori Lightfoot said one really, really interesting thing, and that was that of all the villages out there, there are literally hundreds of them who do not have their audits into the state agency that they're supposed to. Hundreds of them. And none of them have their, audit completed either. So it's kind of like this is just how things roll. People know it, and this is what happens when things roll this way. And Lightfoot said the village had struggled to maintain its insurance policies because of late or non-payments. I'm going to do a podcast on that one. The insurance one is really interesting to me. And Tiffany Henyard is basically uninsurable. They did a direct exclusion from the policy. They said, we will not have anything to do with this individual, and it's Tiffany Henyard. And it was on specifically one of the policies because she's been involved in 48 lawsuits. That makes you uninsurable. So you could have Tiffany Henyard. She could get elected as, say just in a crazy world, Tiffany Henyard gets elected as the mayor of Dalton. Not going to happen. Not saying that's happening. I'm just saying, what if she did? Well, she would have no insurance coverage personally, and anything that she did as mayor, she could get sued by somebody, whomever it is. Maybe it's a vendor delivering stuff. Who knows? Whatever. Maybe it's one of the constituents suing. But because Tiffany Henyard isn't covered, she'd have to pay for that lawsuit out of pocket, and she'd have to be responsible for the end result of that lawsuit out of pocket. And odds are she's not going to be making those payments because she's just not going to be able to cover that kind of exposure. And so then the township or the village is going to have to foot the bill. And do you want to, moving forward, do you want to go down that road? No, you don't. So the insurance company basically said, well, it's going to happen to this policy and this policy. So here's your premium. Here's your coverage. And they basically made those coverages so high that if something does happen, the village is on the hook for those events. So Dalton's got to be squeaky clean from my understanding with the way the insurance policies went, because they've got minimal coverage. It's super expensive, and there's massive liability with Tiffany Henyard, specifically Tiffany Henyard. She is uninsurable. And like 30, insurance companies basically said that one way or the other, or maybe it's 35. Per Lightfoot's report. Some of them just didn't even give a quote. They're like, pass. No, I don't want anything to do with that. And Lightfoot said the village has struggled to maintain its insurance, and the reason they got dropped is because they didn't make their payments. They didn't make their payments. The insurance companies refused to cover Mayor Henyard, Lightfoot said. An attorney for Henyard acknowledged ABC's request for comment, but has not issued a statement. Henyard is seeking re-election as mayor of Dalton. That is not going to happen, period. That is not going to happen. It's just not. Let's see what Fox has to say. Illinois supermayor conducted systematic cover-up of excessive spending, Lightfoot investigation finds. Okay? But no criminal activity. Again, nobody's calling out criminal activity. So beginning at least as early as late 2021, there was a concerted systematic effort on behalf of Mayor Henyard and others in her administration to hide the true financial condition of the village of Dalton from the trustees and from members of the public. One of the interesting things there was a $5 million, I want to say grant. That's not the right word, but basically $5 million that Village of Dalton could have had. And they'd have a positive in their account right now. They wouldn't have a negative. They're negative a couple $1 million. Okay, not a huge hole to dig out of, not a great hole, because that's basically a month of their income of taxes coming in, right? And I'm wildly oversimplifying this just so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. About a couple million comes in and a couple million goes out each month with the Village of Dalton, right? So you got a business, it's got 24 million gross, 24 million expenditure, something along those lines. And all the bills get paid. It's a nonprofit. We're not trying to make money here at the Village of Dalton. We're just trying to get the residents back to this system of accountability where they know where their money's going. What a shocker, right? So there's this $5 million appropriation, I think it's called. And because the Village of Dalton didn't fill out the paperwork on this grant appropriation, they didn't get it. Oakland, exact same thing happened in the city of Oakland. They had such crappy leadership from Sheng Tao that they didn't get the appropriation. They didn't get what was it? 17 million, 11 million, something like that. It was money to fight crime. California, the state had said, hey, we're giving all these cities, come claim your money. We'll give you $10 million, whatever it was, to help fight crime, because Lord knows Oakland needs some help fighting crime. But the leadership under Shang Tao was so bad, and she's under indictment. She is literally under indictment. She had an FBI raid on her and her boyfriend's home. She is under indictment because there's some real shenanigans going on there. And that's why I'm saying I don't think Mayor Henyard here in this case, I don't think she's going to be criminally indicted. I don't think the FBI has enough on her to basically arrest her and indict her. I don't think that's going to happen. So we've got city's credit card spending also spiked to 700 and something in 2023. All right, with literal no tracking. Okay, again, is that criminal? Well, you got to give me the rest of the details, because otherwise I don't know. What was it spent on? Well, it spent on some donuts, and got this and we got that, and took a couple of really good trips. We went out to Portland. But if they can say, hey, this is why we went there to a shopping mall development economic forum thing. They can say, hey, no business came out of it, but we tried, and we're trying real hard, and that's not illegal. It's not illegal. Many of the credit card expenditures have no accompanying receipt, and the statements alone provided limited information about the purchases. Again, okay? But maybe they're legit. Okay? City credit cards were also used to pay for large trips, right? There's no evidence that any business development opportunities came to the village as a result of either of these two trips. But you don't have to have a guarantee of business in order for those expenditures to be legit. That's all I'm saying. Here's from the Washington Examiner. Mayor Lori Lightfoot finds Super Mayor Tiffany Henyard covered up massive excess spending. Well, let's see. Let's see when all the dust clears. Let's see if that is actually the case. But you can see here. Let's go to WGN9. Lori Lightfoot reveals findings of her investigation. Okay, Dalton residents packed into a residents of Dalton have suffered. There's not a system for ensuring there's receipts. $48K was spent on building an ice rink. $775 on credit cards. $200 on Amazon. We've been over all that. Lightfoot highlighted a broken FOIA system. Yep, they didn't have anybody in charge. That is unfortunate, but I don't think they're going to be able to stick the village with, this is illegal, somebody's going to jail, we'll take Tiffany Henyard. I don't think. I'm no prosecutor, and I'm certainly no cop, but yeah, the FBI. Let's talk about the FBI for a second. The FBI is also in contact with various people of information about the allegations here, what they intend to do, and timing of that. No one knows but for them. I don't think they have enough. The one thing I would maybe say is that if there was something to do with Tiffany Henyard's trust, Tiffany Cares, whatever that was, if they took money from the township of Thornton and seeded that, or if they took some expenditures from Thornton and paid bills in Dalton, some funds being used. I know there's a lot of accusations of that, but again, we don't have the actual hardcore truth of what really happened, because Lightfoot's not able to subpoena a lot of those records, and a lot of folks, Tiffany Henyard's team just flat out did not cooperate with Mayor Henyard. Because she's on the opposing team, right? She's coming after her. So, hey, go find it yourself. Do your own work. Figure it out. Lightfoot releases findings. Again, that's Fox 32. You've got the exact same thing. They're all basically regurgitating. Here's Regina Waldrop. And I don't think she had anything much more. Yeah, we've got kind of summation from here. Spent some more money. We don't really know where it went. No accountability. 48 separate lawsuits, 12 for alleged Freedom of Information Act violations. Okay, so it's 12. All right. So bottom line is there's not enough to stick Tiffany Henyard with. I don't believe. There's probably, some ethics that'll be called into question moving forward. I think the village of Dalton is already on a path to kind of square things away. I don't think there's millions and millions and millions of dollars missing. I don't think there's a pay for play like there was in Oakland, which Mayor Sheng Tao was essentially recalled and now has been indicted by the FBI for basically selling influence, her just a whole thing. Right? We're not hearing that with Tiffany Henyard. And what's crazy is Tiffany Henyard has been saying this. She has been saying this over and over and over, but people didn't want to believe her. Well, she kind of glossed over all of the financial, the mismanagement. She's basically not taken any credit for any of that. But what she's pointing to is, I didn't do anything illegal. Well, so far where we sit. So this game isn't over, but I think Tiffany Henyard's tenure as supervisor of Thornton, that is gone. And I think her future as the mayor of Dalton is also gone. And so I think folks need to kind of move on. And what does that look like? Let's wait for the FBI to come out with something. Let's see what that looks like. But that may not happen until after the election is over. And then it's like, wah, wah, wah. Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.